Good evening, Joy. I was just making sure you could hear me.
Yes, I can. Sorry, couldn't find the unmute. Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Amanda?
Oh, I had my speakers turned off.
No problem. I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good evening. It is 6:15, but I do only see Miss Almy. We do not have a quorum yet.
No, Madam Chair, we're still working on that.
Okay.
Mhm. In fact, I'm going to turn off my video for a second and just take a look around here.
Okay. Troy, Dr. Weeks, I just got a message from Carmen and she's saying that she can't get the link to work.
Yeah. I'm sending her a different link right now, so 1 second.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, wow.
All right, so it looks like we have a quorum. So I will call the meeting to order at 6:19 p.m. And Dr. Weeks, can we please have the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Thank you. Can we please have roll call?
Benjamin? Louisa Stark?
Dr. Stark's getting logged in now, Amanda.
Lene Almi?
How many more
Present.
times? Will
Elora
we
Diaz?
be logged in?
Present.
Carmen Trujillo?
I'm here. I can barely hear you, Miss Amanda.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, and with that, we will, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
This is Lene Almy, so moved.
Carmen Trujillo, I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right, with that, the motion passes, and we'll move on to item D.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the governing board, there's not a lot to tangible material to report to you tonight, other than I spent some quality time at the Edison School campus, I should say virtually, with teachers and students observing classrooms, and it was quite a sight. I was able to see middle school students as well as some sixth graders and then some kinders, and it was really very well done. Not to sound surprised, because we've got excellent instruction going on in all of our campuses and our grade levels, but it was very rewarding to be able to spend time at the Edison campus and observe the teachers. And that would conclude my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. Dr. Weeks, would, I guess I could touch base with your friend later. I think it would be a really great experience if board members could also observe. So I would love to reach out to the principals and see if we can find a time for us to observe some classes and see how everything is going.
Yep, love to talk to you offline more about what that process looks like, or any board member for that matter who'd like to take a peek at what the virtual instruction looks like.
Thank you. All right, and then we don't have any community communications tonight?
No, not tonight.
That is correct.
Great. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to item D1.
Mr. Quintana, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Weiss. At one point, I will stop doing that. Troy, can you allow me to share, Troy? I'm not able to share at this point,
Yeah, go ahead and try again.
but great. So thank you, Madam President, and good evening to you and the rest of the governing board members, as well as fellow staff members and the community. Wanted to report this evening on the annual financial report at the school level, and also to ask for your approval of this report. But also I want to give you a little bit of background before I get into some of the information. And we had a review and approval of the actual annual financial report back in the October 15th meeting. And at the time it was approved by the board. And also we submitted that information to ADE in a timely fashion by the 15th of the actual due date. And so this particular report is a new section of the AFR, and they actually extended the deadline on November 20th to submit this report because of the fact that it was a new report, and they made, so they're making some changes along the way. Ultimately, I think they finally made the final changes a couple of weeks ago. And so what I'm reporting tonight on is part of the actual annual financial report. It's a new section. but it does have to be approved by the board, just like the regular AFR is. And it will be submitted to ADE by November 20th. So this report is, again, it's a new section, and it's something that the Auditor General asked all districts to do, and to begin reporting information on a school level, by school site. That's something that they instructed all districts a year or two ago to begin doing the tracking, by school, and that's something that we started doing. And but this is the first year for the actual report to be updated and to be submitted along with the AFR. And like I mentioned, the report is due by November 20th, which we're aligned to get that in there on time. And the key thing about this report that is important is that there's an allocation that we do throughout the year that we consider both direct and indirect allocation of expenses to the schools. And what that means is that throughout the year, we allocate expenses, let's say for payroll, benefits and everything else along for each school. We allocate that directly to them, every single month, every time we have those kind of expenses. And what this report does, it accumulates information of the expenses that are indirectly allocated to the district. So we have expenses such as for administration, for plant services, child nutrition, also maybe like bond authorization funds that we use for our capital improvements, capital overrides and so forth, that we're allocating indirectly after the fact, based on information, based on attendance and enrollment, for each of the schools. And so this report is only the indirectly allocated portion of all the expenses. So, and I'll explain that a little bit in the summary that I have put together for this presentation. And this report, kind of similar to the regular AFR, it provides information by revenues and expenses, by school site, and categorizes them by instruction, support services, operational expenses, and transportation, and other major categories. And same thing with the revenues, allocates them and separates them between local sources and also federal sources. And we put more or less the entire report on board docs. So if you had a chance to see that information, it's pretty lengthy. A lot of worksheets that go into the file, and a lot of information that's broken down into a lot of detail. And I tried to summarize it the best I could to something that we can kind of look at and review. And what I have in here is several columns. First of all, vertically, I have these broken down by school, and based on a school count. School count. And this is what I mean about the indirect and direct allocation of expenses. So throughout the year, we're allocating directly to the schools, every single month, every time we have an expense, this column here. So in total, we're allocating an average about 4.7 million per school that goes directly to expenses for salaries and other things that each school accumulates throughout the year. And the reason I highlighted these, I highlighted the student count, the indirectly allocated, and also the total expenses. Because that's what this report indicates. This report has information on this level that's indirectly allocated. So at the end of the year, we allocated these expenses to each school to the tune of 2.4 million per school on average. And if we look at the overall summary, that gets us to an average expense per school of 2.4 million that's indirectly allocated, as well as a bigger number of 4.7 million per school that's directly allocated. And we also put an expense in here of the total expenses between the two figures, the two columns. So in total, we have per school 7.2 million that's allocated throughout the year and at the end of the year. And we also did a calculation based on average total expenses per student. And on average, per school, we have expenses of 17,191. Now, keep in mind that this is not just M&O. It also includes M&O expenses, as well as bond authorization funds that we spend on capitalization and also capital overrides. So this is basically all inclusive of all the expenses that for each school, not just the M&O budget. And that's the reason why it's it's substantially higher than the M&O budget that typically runs around 53 million. But when you account for the other funds with bond authorization dollars that we spend and capital overrides and others, federal funds, for example, the amounts reach up to over 93 million. And so I was trying to encapsulate, kind of a lot of information into something that we can kind of digest a little bit better. And also, if you look at the student count per school, it averages up to 426. Now, this does not include Faith North in pre-K, so this is just the K through 8 schools. With that, I'd like to answer any questions that you might have about the report.
Mr. Quintana, I have a few questions. So I guess my biggest observation here is the differences per student that is allocated per school. And I'm noticing that there are some schools with smaller populations that receive more funds per student. So can you help to explain why there are differences and why a school with fewer students would receive more than a school with more students?
So yeah, a couple of things. One is that this is not broken down by necessarily the funds I receive, but it's broken down between the expenses that they incur, as a school. Sometimes there's a distinction, sometimes not. But these are based on expenses that each school has, and also you might have a school, for example, that might have some more funds coming out of the bond authorization, where they might have a capitalization or something that's fixed in the school. For example, like an HVAC system, or they have been, some of those have been replaced, and other, for example, federal dollars as well, that there might be a little bit higher allocation of expenses to a particular school for federal funds. So that's where you'll see some of the differences here between the schools.
So I'm wondering, so do they receive only, the amount that they spend, or do these schools potentially, like I see Whittier here, they've only spent $13,000 compared to, say, Schaub, who spent 21.5. Does Whittier potentially have savings for more money, or are they only allocated however much funds that correlate to their expenses?
Yeah, the expenses are we try to tie in the expenses as much as possible to the revenue coming in, which is based on ADM, and student attendance and enrollment. And so the base, the base allocation, if you will, is going to be based on the enrollment that they have for that particular district. And if they have other expenses that that they might incur, it might come out of a different pocket of funds. For example, bond like bond overrides and capitalization. Now, they wouldn't necessarily have a savings, if you will. The savings is more or less at the kind of overall district level. This is just kind of breaking down, the expenses that each school has, but not there's not going to be like a surplus or deficit for each of the schools.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what I would be interested in looking at is, because there are such variations between student count, which would account for variations in total expenses. Proportionally speaking, I would want to know, and I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this because I'm not a math person, so maybe somebody could help me out, but I would want to know the percentage allocation per student for, say, Shaw as compared to Whittier. So are we seeing that Shaw is per student, they're like spending 50% more than Whittier? I don't really know what that math equation looks like, but I'm trying to articulate that word problem here. And the reason
Right.
the reason I'm asking is, I think this is wonderful that we have school level reporting, and I think, and I'm sure that you guys are already like on this, but this is another way that we can infuse equity into the system, right? So are we ensuring, have we gone through all of the spending best practices from each school to figure out like what is standard level, like at minimum best spending practices to ensure that like all of our students are getting the same quality resources, whatever that might be, regardless of what school they go to? And then what are those like above and beyond, like cherry on top items that some of these schools might be providing to their students? And would that help to elevate the educational experience of another school that isn't spending as much? Like, these are the questions that I think would be really, or the answers to these questions that would be really helpful to start to dive into that equity piece.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. I understand your question, and I think it does make sense. And so that's something that, again, it's my understanding that we began doing this, just recently in the last year or two. And so it does provide opportunity now that we have this report and we're able to, kind of break it down different ways, that we can analyze it a little more deeply into, what you're discussing. So that's something I think that's something we should do, and we can, commit to doing that going forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Quintana, I'd just like to, I'm just sitting here doing some quick math, and I just want to quickly point out how not counting the preschool kids skew the per pupil expenditure. So for example, going back to Shaw, we have 293. I believe there's probably 150 preschool kids at Shaw, and I'm just going from memory. So if I have 293 plus 150, that puts Shaw at 443 divided by, what is that, 6278888 divided by that 443. So I think you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yes, I can, yeah.
6278888 divided by 443 is $14,000 per student, not $21,000 per student. So when we build back in the preschool that's blended into Shaw, Kenilworth, and Garfield, I think you're going to see that the cost per pupil rates change. So when we're talking about expenses, having those preschool counts in there does make a difference. Although I do believe the AG report likes to focus on just the K through 8, because those are revenue-based grade levels, half of kinder and all of 1 through 8. So I know that this is also the first year of this kind of drill down report. I'll be interested to see how it matriculates over the years to really get to a place where we can use it as a useful tool. I'm doubtful that it's a useful tool today because simply it's the first year that we've seen this. But just to give you an example how that 21,462 can be skewed by not having preschool, and we can do the same thing with Kenilworth and Garfield.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Are there any other questions? So that's that's the information, and again, would like to ask your consideration to approve the report.
Thank you, Mr. Quintana. Do I have a motion to approve item D1?
This is Lene Almy. I move approval of the annual financial report.
Carmen Trujillo, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. And is there any discussion?
Not at the moment, but I would like to further understand maybe why we don't note that some schools do have, at least those ones, start maybe to understand why the expenses are still rolled in to that number of students. So thank you for bringing that up.
We'll blame the AG, Mr. Trujillo, at this time.
All right. Hearing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. With that, the motion passes and we will adjourn to executive session.
Do you need a motion?
Oh, yes.
I
May-
move we adjourn to executive session.
Trujillo, I'll second. If we need to.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right. And we will adjourn at 6:41. it looks like we're still waiting for Dr. Stark and Ms. Trujillo.
I know Mr. Trujillo had trouble with a link earlier.
Okay. I don't see anything coming in from her. You sent her a message.
She disconnected.
Okay, great. All right, well, we will resume regular session at 7:24 p.m. And do I have a motion to approve item F1?
No, so moved.
I can't tell if someone's talking. This is Lene Elmy. I move approval of the superintendent's performance-based pay for the 2019-2020 school year as discussed in executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
That second, I couldn't hear them.
Yes, it was Dr. Stark who seconded. Well, I would just like to say that I appreciate Dr. Weeks, the work that you have done since I've been on the board, and especially in this pandemic. I don't think, any of us, especially you, ever thought that you'd, be managing a school during a global pandemic. And I think that, you have really led our district in the right way. And I know that there's still a lot to do, but I have full confidence in your leadership. So again, thank you for everything you've done.
Well, thank you for saying, Madam Chair. I have a wonderful team. We have a wonderful team of, and I call them the Phoenix Elementary family, to which board members are a part of. So I don't do any of this or pretend to do any of this work by myself, but I do appreciate you saying.
Hearing no other additional comments, we will move on to item G1. Are there any board reports or requests?
Dr. Diaz, we need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hearing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Okay, with that, the motion passes. And Ms. Almy, we will definitely miss you because I do not catch all those small details. We will move on to item G1. Okay, I do not hear any board reports or requests. Mr. Quintana, this is more, I'll send you an email, but I'd like to talk to you a little bit more offline just about your thoughts and how we can use the site level financial reports as a tool for equity throughout our district.
Sounds good.
And we will move on to item G2.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the governing board. This is a request to provide or to approve the 2 dates in January. I believe, let me get back. There should have been 3 dates in January. January 7th.
The 14th and the 28th.
Yes, I must be looking at the wrong board docs. So yes, to approve 3 January dates.
Can you remind me why we are requesting 2 back-to-back meetings? So one on the 7th and one on the 14th?
Yes, Madam Chair, due to COVID. So if we have a meeting on the 7th, we will likely have a conversation about the COVID metrics and whether or not we're going to be coming back on the 14th. And then another COVID presentation on the 14th. And if we are returning to in-person instruction, a report on that, and then general business on the 23rd.
Okay.
But we
Great.
can change it around however the board would like.
Carmen, do you have any questions or concern with the 3 dates? I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just was asking if it would still be at 6 p.m. or 15, whatever.
6:15, yes. Let me see, it should say here.
Yeah.
Do you guys see January 9th and January 23rd as the attachment?
No, I see January 7th, 14th, and the 28th.
Okay, so I've got a hiccup in my board docs. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, well, I triple checked once I heard the 23rd, so thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, these dates work for me.
So I'm assuming the 7th would be the new board member swearing in, I guess. Or is that going to be?
Yes, that's when we typically have our swearing in ceremony, and we would elect new officers, or at least the new president, vice presidents on rotation, probably keep that policy. But then we need to, as a second item at the 7th, we need to take a look at the COVID or the metrics to see if the 14th still works for us for returning in-person instruction. And I'm not trying to set the agenda so far in advance. It's just kind of what I'm thinking. I don't want to signal that we're voting on or making any decisions tonight on any future agenda items. That wouldn't be legal.
Did those work for you, Mr. Hill? Okay, great. All right, so so it says take possible action. So would we just vote on those then?
Yes.
Okay.
So the governing board, so the administration would recommend that the governing board approve the 3 dates in January as outlined in the rationale, the 7th, the 14th, and the 23rd.
And do I have a motion to approve item G2?
Carmen Trujillo, so moved.
This is Lene Elmy, I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, the item passes, and we'll move on to item G3. Are there any future agenda items? Okay. Hearing none, thank you guys for your time, and this meeting is adjourned at 7:33 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.